Welcome, everybody. We have Chris Prefontaine on the show today. Chris is a two-time best-selling author of Real Estate on Your Terms and the New Rules of Real Estate Investing. He's also the founder and CEO of smartrealestatecoach.com and the host of the Smart Real Estate Coach podcast. Now, I got a lot of questions for you, so I'm glad we kind of dove into this quickly and didn't start bantering too much beforehand. But I know you're in beautiful Buffalo, so why don't you give people a little more background and what you're doing today before we dive in.
Yeah, I'm out in Buffalo. I just got here. It's a balmy 14 degrees. I'm actually speaking to the Flip Out Academy here in Buffalo. They do like a holiday year end, so I'm excited to talk to them because I love talking about next year.
Cool. So, I've got your books. There we go. See, books. Very good, right here. So
They're rigged up.
Good to go. These things are awesome. So I think that particularly, so when we talk about real estate, we talk about investing, two things immediately come to mind. And by the way, I've got a family that's got background in real estate. So I understand, I can understand what you guys are doing pretty well. But two things come to mind. One is 2008 crash. And the other thing is, are we headed for a similar crash right now? So in your book, I love the way you're candid. You go into what happened to you in 2008. Maybe you can give kind of a little bit of that story and then dive into where we are today. And then I'd love to know, what you're trying to teach people, how you're trying to coach them, because, we have a lot of clients who make some money and then they're like, well, what do I do? How do I invest? And that's a whole nother discussion that we'll get to.
Sure. So starting with the 2008 debacle, which was quite a mess, we dove into that with 22, 23 properties or so, Dave, and it was nasty because I was on every property personally. I did the old conventional thing, put up money, purchase it, and sign personally on the loan. So when the market crashed, some of our properties went down by like 2/3, like some condominium conversion properties. So obviously the banks came knocking, and they came knocking on them for me. So it was from 2008 February, I remember like it was yesterday, till about February 2012. I would consider that a full part-time, almost full-time job of winding out of those properties, short selling, foreclosures, trying to keep and survive, just everything to do to stay above water or, liquidate those things. So it was nasty. Going forward, it took that long to fix it and get out of it. And then by about 12, I said, do I even deal with real estate again? Like that's how fried I was, even though I've been in it for years. And we said, okay, we pivoted and we re-engineered everything to just buy on terms now. So that means lease purchase or owner financing primarily for us, and some subject to purchases, but all of them not taking bank loans, not going out and raising money because I can't sleep good with that. None of the stuff in our portfolio now are we on a loan, and we carry 50 or 60 at any one time, just our family team, not counting students.
Yeah, that's amazing. I remember 2008 because I remember getting a call by a guy who was a contractor who had been, doing multi-million-dollar homes in Silicon Valley. And overnight, everything dropped. And he called me because I was selling a pickup truck of mine that was broken in some way. I forget. And the way he described it was, he said, look, we're just going into jobs now and figuring out, and we're not calculating what we should get on the job. We're saying, what do we need to survive this next month, 3 months, whatever it is.
Crazy.
And he was mechanical. So he's like, I need a truck. I had to give up my truck because I lost my truck because, we got nothing. And it was a very tough time. And to your credit, and you humbly do not mention it, but, you worked your way through all those issues with each one of your, creditors, whatever. Which was rare in a lot of those stances, as you say in your book. People said, just walk. I mean, come on, it's their issue, not yours. And my congratulations to you. That took a lot of integrity and drive, or what you got on your shirt, a lot of grit.
I appreciate that. I mean, in hindsight, I wouldn't change it, and in hindsight, it was a good thing. It'll sound a little foo-foo, but I'm big on the energy of that. I mean, it happened for a reason, right? So it parlayed into what we got going on now with my family, which is just an incredibly different environment in every way, profitability wise, family wise, positivity wise. So I'm thankful we went through it. You couldn't convince me of that back then, but I'm thankful now that we went through it.
Yeah. One of those hindsight things. So before we dive into it, like what you got going on that's different, can you give me your feel for where we are in this real estate market today? Because it looks kind of frothy in a similar way.
Well, here's what I say in every show. If I had that answer, I'd be definitely somewhere else, and it probably wouldn't be Buffalo. It'd be probably Cayman Islands if I knew how to predict that stuff. But personally, I don't think it's gonna go where it was in '08. I just don't. But I'm not an economist. No one knows that. But I do think that a couple things. One is the way we buy right now. I'm super comfortable with, and the way we structure deals with terms, because all we're doing now differently is we're increasing the length of our terms so that I don't worry about if something happens in the next year or two. If I've got a 10-year term, my office building I just bought a year ago on terms, no banks, is a 20-year term. So I don't really get caught up in the market. Number one, as far as the terms. Number two, and we'll talk about it, I guess, but a lot of the purchases we're doing, we are capturing massive principal pay down every single month through the term of these deals. So that really protects us. I'll never say recession proof, but I'll say it builds the recession proof muscle a little bit better so that we can protect ourselves by that massive pay down. So if there was a pullback, we've got that built into our terms deal. So when you're doing things on terms, Dave, it's like, say the market's flying upwards and some of our students are in hot markets. Okay, so you're probably not going to get a deal from a FSBO, but you'll get it by dealing with some free and clear owners, or you get it from expired listings. And the market's flat, it's free picking on all the categories we deal with. And if the market's diving, now it's free picking. You just got to be careful how you structure it. So we'll buy in every market, which is pretty cool. It's just a matter of what source we're going to get those deals from.
That's right. And so, is this something that if somebody's considering doing this, it sounds like with your coach, they can get a coach of yours, they can get guidance on how to do it part-time versus having to kind of commit full-time out of the gate type of thing.
Yeah, good point. So most of our students are part-time. Recently, one of the younger guys had a 2-year goal of coming full time, and he came full time. So there are some people in corporate that say, look, I just want to replace that someday. Great. But most of them are part time or in the part time moving to full time process. So I'd say, with the exception of literally one, two, or three people, they're all part time. So what's cool is all of our deals on the end game, it creates for us, and our students are above and below this number. But for us, it creates like 75 grand profit on every single deal. So, and it's over time, but that's kind of neat. So a part-time, I can say, well, man, I can do 6 deals this year and create an income, 75 grand a deal. That's going to take 1 to 3 years, 4 years, 5 years to totally pay out. But that's neat to know that you've got that coming down the road. One guy's electrical engineer, for example, from Pennsylvania, still not part-time. I keep telling him to do it because he's doing really well. But he's put his kids through school and he's just doing this whole thing part-time, and he's earmarking it that way. It's pretty neat.
Yeah, it sounds interesting. So I'm kind of curious on the coaching model because when I've seen these types of situations before, it's kind of like buy the book, attend the seminar, and go get it type of thing. I like the way you kind of give the option of, you don't have to fly solo, but you got somebody who can kind of help you along. How does that work?
You just hit a huge thing. Like tonight, I'm going to talk about this, Dave. I call it the gap, and it's sad. It's ridiculous. So I'll get calls and emails. This is every week. This is not like one a month. And the student will say, or the potential student will say, "Yeah, but I spent like X amount on training and seminars, and I haven't done a deal yet." And it boggles my mind. So I started going after our mission as a company. Like our mission statement is to empower our associates. Those are our students that we do deals with around the country to complete 1,500 transactions by 2022. So it didn't say to sell 10 programs as a company, it's to complete transactions. So we're trying to help close that gap of the time between when they take a course or a seminar and then the day they do a deal. We're trying to close that. Some people don't even get through that gap, right? It's brutal. I have 2 students that spent 100 grand before I met them. And one of the wives, they're in Pennsylvania, the wife said, I told him he's not doing your program. So now we laugh about it and he's having great success, but that's unbelievable to me. So how we do that is we get in the trenches and we do deals with them. We're doing deals every day, all day. So I know most mentors would go, how can you do that? Like single mentors out there. Well, my son-in-law, Zach, handles all the buyers. The sellers with me. And my son, Nick, handles all the buyers. We're doing properties like that every day. So when we have a student, we help them with the exact same thing. We all have our specialty. So it's just like we're doing the same thing. We're just doing it with other students around the country. So it's rewarding. It's fun. It keeps us super sharp. As you know, if you're coaching, you got to be on the cusp. And then our course helps because it's like a living, breathing thing. It's online. And most courses I bought in the past, they get outdated eventually. I mean, they just do. It's no one's fault. we go through one module out of our 10 modules every month cycling. So if there's an agreement, a line in an agreement, or a video that's outdated by slight couple wording, we're constantly updating this thing. So they have a living, breathing thing that we're in as well, and we're doing deals with as well. That was a long answer to your question. I hope I hit it.
No, no, it's good. You're hitting it, but I also want to dive in a little bit deeper. So if you were to walk me through a step by step. So let's say I want to get involved. Let's say I want to do this, and what's the process I'm gonna do to get involved and basically go out and buy something on my terms. And I want to be coached.
Okay.
I don't want to just read this book, which is a great book, award-winning book, and then think I know everything and go do it, because my family's got a background in real estate, right? So I'm set. I know this stuff. I can do it. I don't want to play that game. Okay, I'm 62 years old. I know better. So I want to get coached. So what's the process I'm going to go through to start doing transactions?
Okay, good question. So after the book or after a webinar, you're going to dive into all that free stuff and you say, good, this is for me. Then you're going to go through the Quantum Leap System home study course. That's what I alluded to when I said it's a living, breathing thing. That's the foundation. Like, everyone has to go through that. Even to come to our event, they have to go through that, or else they're just going to feel like they got to drink with a fire hose. They're not going to know what hit them. So after they go through that course, then they apply to one of the levels of coaching. So each level has a different involvement. I'll give you examples from bottom to top. The bottom level has weekly group calls. You are always tied to our Slack community, which is very helpful. Every day, all day, 24/7. Next up, you're going to have coaching as needed on deals, but we're not flying to your market or doing anything special, but we are in the trenches with you. No limitation on calls. We're after it. You got a bunch of deals, we're on the phone with you. You got one a month, we're on the phone with you, whatever pace you want. The other two levels above that involve us on our dime flying to your marketplace to go on appointments if that's the stage you're at. And once you go on appointments, it might be to do an admin day. Like, I went to DC with one of our guys, very successful there, and just did admin with him because he had already done like 8 or 9 deals, and I know what he needed next, and I went over and helped him. So we when I say hands-on, we're hands-on in the trenches with these guys. And then there's got to be a cutoff, right? Like, these guys don't want to be married to us forever and do revenue sharing forever. They get it after like 10 deals. So roughly speaking, after like 10 deals, they're on their own. There's no more rev share with us. Now, I say that, and we have people in our community, we call it the Wicked Smart community, and they're all saying, well, I don't want to go away. Like, this is like my family now. So we do have a program where they can stick around and go to all the meetings and stay with, but they don't have to pay us any money for rev share.
Okay, so with the coaching, basically there's some type of rev share because you guys are actively involved. You get a little bit of money for the coaching or something. I don't know what little, quote unquote, but some money. But then really you're doing a rev share because you got this kind of open-ended, we'll support you, give you what you need.
Right. And then we call it capping out. They'll cap out when they get to their 10th deal in most of the cases.
Yeah, but once again, that makes sense. It's like, let me go through, learn the ropes. Once I know the ropes, then I'm okay. It's like going to school, but you make money as you go to school.
Yeah, it's kind of neat because, I mean, it could be little things, but as you know, that can be costly in real estate. So I'm on the plane today and I'm on Slack, the community, and one of my students in Connecticut near me said, Chris, quick question. And they copied a text that the seller was going back and forth, and he said, how would I answer this? You know, they're little things like that, but they bridge the gap, and they eventually they get it.
Yeah, well, I mean that's critical. I've been not only coaching leaders for 15 years here, but I've done a lot of sales, bid, dev stuff, and there's multiple ways on how you can respond to something like that. And if you've got the right way, you can make progress.
Yeah.
If you say it a little bit wrong, just have a few words wrong tone of voice, whatever it might be, you're off the rails.
Yeah, you could even lose the deal. Now you're talking. I said 75 grand, but I'll give you the low and the high, to be fair. So the low in our whole community is like 45-ish. That's out in Arizona. We have a student there that just lower end. And some of that skill set, but some of it's market. And then we have higher end, a couple places in California, DC comes to mind. We had a student just this week, Mike, the one who went full time, worked on a deal for about 3 months. It was an owner financing deal, but it's a 200 grand deal, all 3 paydays, through the term. Pretty neat.
Yeah, no, that's awesome. So, I'm kind of curious. I might be interested in doing a pilot with you if you had an interest, just to try it. Have you ever thought of approaching or making it available to some entrepreneurs where they want to do something that's an optional program for employees, where a group of employees? I'm thinking of people who have line employees or, people that are set on salary, and they wouldn't necessarily be comfortable doing this on their own, but the company might offer it as an optional program that people could get involved in to try as a way to supplement their income working at the company. It also it shows the company cares about them. Also shows the company's giving them an opportunity to learn and to grow and expand.
Yeah, what comes to mind when you say that? No, I haven't thought of that. And what comes to mind is as long as the company is supporting that, bingo, you have a win. So if it's a cool company where they're open minded and they want to do that, that's kind of neat. I haven't got asked that before. Recently, an agency, a guy that consults agencies, and I think it's mostly like insurance and that type, teaches his agency owners to pull their cash out when they're profitable and do something with it. And so he wants me to come in and teach how they can either do this or passively do some investing with us if they wanted to. So I said, okay, I'm game for that. I haven't heard of the corporate idea like that. It's kind of neat.
Well, we work with a lot of entrepreneurs that are 50 or fewer employees. So a
Mm.
lot of them 10, 20, 30 employees. And it just struck me as something that might be a way. I've talked to them about teaching their employees how to manage money, because a lot of them, they kind of peak.
Yeah.
They hit, in their role, they don't have the skill or the desire to move beyond that, and so they need to learn how to do something, and they need to do it with expertise. And you may have seen it years ago. It came out decades and decades ago, 50, 100 years ago, whatever. The Richest Man in Babylon,
Hmm.
little booklet story.
Love it. Yep.
And yeah, so it's straightforward. It teaches you to set aside 10%, invest that, but you have to invest in something and that's what I like about your program. It's just not read a book, everything, but let me teach you how to walk before you can run. We'll coach with you, we'll work with you, and then move ahead. So another question I have for you is with the sellers. So what you're saying is you're basically using other people's money in a way. You're basically finding people who have the equity in their property and working out something that's a mutual win-win, but they don't immediately cash out. What is that? What's the structure? How does that typically work?
Okay, so with people that have equity, because there's some people that don't have equity or over leveraged too for deals, but the people that have equity, typically we do a sandwich, what we call a sandwich lease. As long as you're not in Texas, the only place you can't do them. There's other ways to do it. So if you have a house, let's just use numbers, so the listeners can relate. Let's say it's a $300,000 house, and you couldn't sell it on the open market for whatever reason. You're not willing to lower your price, but it's within, it's not grossly overpriced, and you owe 250. So you're trying to protect that 50. Now, a lot of these people were on the market with a realtor, so they already knew that they were going to not protect the whole 50. But let's say that they're trying to protect the whole 50. What I do is I go in and say, okay, Dave, great. I'm going to go ahead and structure a lease purchase with you for 36 months, let's say, and I'll tell you why we do 36 usually on the leases. And at the end of the 36 months, what's going to happen is I'm going to give you your 50, your whole 50. You're going to pay your own transfer tax if your state has it, but you're getting your whole 50. I'm going to then pay off your loan. Now your loan's not 250 anymore, right? Because it's 3 years later. I'm going to benefit from that. So I lock in their cash, not their price. Very important. So we keep the principal pay down. So they get all they care is they get their 50 if they can wait, like you alluded to. The other ones that have equity, let's say they're debt free. I alluded to that earlier. Those are great because we're going to structure principal only payments. The whole thing's going to principal. As long as they get their price or even a premium, and I get a long enough term, and those are usually 4 years or more, the free and clear properties, then that's how we're going to structure that with the seller. And those are both instances of equities there.
So when you're doing a 4-year contract to buy something that, let's say they have 100% equity, which, as you know, it happens, but it's not, I don't know how prevalent it is on the market, but how much of that equity are you paying off in the 4 years?
If it's a free and clear, like we just closed one in Pennsylvania, after 24 months, he was getting paid $1,540 a month from us, principal only. And we bought it for like $420 and sold it for $499 over 2 years. So 1,540 times whatever that comes to, 30 grand, 60 something $1,000 got paid down in principal in 2 years. It's a big number.
Okay.
So it just depends on the size deal.
It's like 15%, and then at the end of the 4 years, you're gonna buy out the rest of it.
We're gonna have a balloon payment, yeah. But where are we getting that? We're getting that from our tenant buyer we put in the home, who has a mortgage ready plan to make sure it coincides within that time frame. We pre-qualify for that, so they get their end loan, they cash the whole thing out.
So basically, one method you're doing is you're structuring where you're buying for your loan. Are you put? Does it require any down payment or payment for the lease option? What?
Okay, so on our end on the buy, typically not. If we love the deal and there's a ton of equity sitting there, there are exceptions. We did an oceanfront home on Cape Cod on a bluff overlooking the water. Beautiful. We bought it for 945 and we negotiated 9,000 down. That like broke the rule, but still $9,000 down on that size house. We just took it from another deal, payday wise. So usually no down payment, but when we do no down payment, the reason these aren't great for the new person that doesn't have cash until you have a few deals is that you have to pay their transfer tax. If you're not putting any down, you can't expect them to come out of pocket for the transfer tax. So we're typically paying the transfer tax for them. I saw one today that the settlement statement came to me from my attorney, like $1,600 in transfer tax you have to pay to own that house. So it's not a big deal, but when you're brand new, that could be a big deal.
Yeah. So if I'm understanding it correctly, basically you're structuring the four-year transaction. You have nothing up front. You've got the payments every month, and then you went out and potentially your goal is to find someone to then do a similar lease option on a shorter term, so that you kind of lock in your profit from the get-go.
Yeah, shorter term to leave a buffer for life to happen because let's say you're my buyer, I get you pre-qualified, your plan comes back to me and says, okay, these buyers are great. They're going to be mortgage ready and they'll give us a range like 18 to 24 months. If I have a 36-month term, I'm good with that because I have a little buffer for you to kind of get stumped up with the mortgages or maybe your credit didn't get repaired as quickly or whatever slowed you down. So yeah, I just want to make sure there's a little buffer in there so we have breathing room.
Okay. So in that situation, what if there is a downturn, the value of the house goes down, then that person is probably not going to follow through and buy the house, right?
Yeah, a couple of things to do. This gets asked all the time by not just on shows, but buyers. They go, what's going to happen here? So their deal is not contingent upon an appraisal, and they know that. So they have two choices at the end of that term. Three really. They walk away, which is the worst scenario, which we don't want. They lose their deposit. They extend the term with us and continue to rent. Perhaps we haven't had that happen because it's usually these other two, or they simply come up with the extra cash. Like if it's a small difference, there's been tiny differences. Like the appraisal's off by $5,000 or $8,000. The banks do what they do, so they'll come up with the extra cash they need. So those are their options on the buy side. On the sell side, all our lease purchases are structured whereby we could assign the home back to the seller. Morally and ethically, we don't want to. And I will tell you that this has happened on numerous occasions where we'll call the seller and say, I know you don't want the house back. And they say, no, we don't want it back. Okay, so I need an extension of, say, 6 months or 12 months. And so we've been very successful with extending terms when needed to. So there's a lot of wiggle room and a lot of ways to pivot the way that our forms are set up and as well as the way we operate in general with how we structure the deals.
And when you go out and look at homes that you're going to potentially approach or consider for the program, is days on the market and something that you look at, or is it simply you're looking at location and what you perceive as the value?
Yeah, very good. So I actually prefer when someone can't sell it because
Yeah,
now I can
yeah,
get very flexible on terms. So we fish a lot in the expired listing pool, the people who can't sell on the market with the realtors, because even in a hot market, those exist. So I love
yeah.
fishing in that pool because sometimes it's just they were stubborn on price or they did have a tough realtor. Of course, they always blame the realtor, but you and I both know it's usually not them. It's usually the market or the price.
Yeah.
So I love the expired listings for that reason. And you're kind of a hero to them because they're so fed up at that point with the market or the realtor that they're angry they didn't sell, and so they can't wait to get something done with us. And some of them just had to expire because maybe it's a $300,000 house and they owe 300 or 302, and they can't even afford to go down in price. They can't afford to come out of pocket that much. Those are great deals too.
Okay. And what do you do with the person that's just got an unrealistic estimate of what the value of the home is? I mean, I was actually looking at a place up in my area here. I'm in Northern California, so we don't have $300,000 homes.
Right,
Very rarely.
right, right.
But I was looking at a place, and beautiful place, had a lot of great attributes. But when I looked at least, I think I was on Realtor.com. When I looked at what the typical per square foot or whatever rate was, this guy was like double.
Wow.
But it had some unique attributes as far as the dirt. The house was not, I mean, it's basically a tear down. You got 2 homes on the property, which is great. You probably keep the newer one as a rental or whatever, but you tear down the other one. It's too funky. But it was lakefront. Okay. So really rare in California. So, but what do you do with someone like that who's got, and it's been on the market for a year?
Well, double's extreme, but I'll tell you what I usually do if it's double or even if it's a little less. I try to get on there, and I tell my students this all the time, the script. I try to get on their side of the fence. Like I would say to you, if you were that person, look, I'm on your team here. I'm trying to get a deal structured. So where'd you come up with the number? So I want to know their motivation, because if there's no motivation, it's a moot point what I talk about with them. But if they have a legitimate reason they're selling, and I know at some point they got to get there, then the conversation is more like, all right, I'm on your team. Where'd you get the number? And they can't come up with it. Say, okay, then let's get an appraisal. I'll even split the appraisal with you if you will agree that that's the number. You and I don't make up the number. So I'm on your team. We don't make up the number. The market does. We can't control it. So I get myself out of the equation so they don't think that I'm not trying to negotiate. I'm trying to come to a fair market value. We really do. We don't lowball. So it's really about the appraisal and taking the onus off of us so they don't think we're hammering them on price. Now, if there's no motivation, again, to my earlier point, you can talk this thing in circles, and I don't think they're going to ever do something. So when I look at a property information sheet that comes to me from, say, a virtual assistant or a student, I go right to the motivation before I look at the numbers. If the motivation's there, we can make everything else work, usually.
Yeah.
That makes sense?
Yeah, no, it does. And what was the other question I was just thinking of? I just went blank. How many properties do you typically have to look at or try to do a transaction on before you're able to close one?
Yep, I can give you exact math because I'll say it tonight, so it's fresh in my brain. The property information sheet that I just used that word earlier, it's just nothing more than a virtual assistant calls on an expired listing. They say yes, no, or maybe. Yes or maybe. It's not a no to terms. I get that sheet. Now, I take 17 of those sheets for me to pick up the phone, or our student to pick up a phone, to get in the door and get an appointment. Typically, this is just the average is over 7 years now. It takes about 25 of those to actually get a contract. So now I get a contract. Now I'm going to try to get that thing sold. And so with those ratios, about every 40 property sheets, so 10 a week is my number, we get a deal that cashes out. It actually gets sold. So that's the number I use for new students. All right, we got to see how we're going to generate 10 leads for you in your funnel. Everything else I can teach you as you go. And it's going to be bopping and weaving, but 10 leads, that's what you need a week. It's not a lot.
Yeah, 10 leads a week. And how are those leads generated?
We primarily use virtual assistants who now are in our system and have been, like, one guy's been with us since 2013. So like he's done tens of thousands, if not hundreds of thousands of calls for us. And now he's got a team built around him so that we use them. They're not in-house in our office. They're in-house that we control them. They used to work for other companies, and our students get to access them. So they're not going out and getting some person, and I have nothing against it, but a lot of people go to the Philippines and they'll pay $3 and they got to train them. And no, we pay more, but they're trained. And most of them are US, and we do have some in the Philippines, but they're real estate trained and they're terms trained. So they know what they're doing.
No, I actually last week was listening to some virtual call makers for a client that was calling for outsourced IT services, and they're US based. However, they were not well trained, even though they'd done similar calls. And so I listened to 5 calls. Only one of them was good, and that guy lied. So, it's just like, do you really want these type of people representing you on the phone? And they were all US. So that's really critical. I think that's a big value add, that you have the lead generation source that's at I assume that's a reasonable rate. What can you give the audience an idea of what that costs to have them call on your behalf?
Yeah, our main guy, we pay, I think it's 12, and then they range from like 8 to 12 an hour.
Yeah, that's nothing for a good lead.
No, and they work about 5 hours to get, I should have went further with that. So to get the 10, they got to work like 5 hours a week is going to get the VA to produce about 6 to 10 leads, because they go like 1 to 2 an hour work. Because we give them, they don't sit there and try to source. We give them an online platform to go get these numbers to call. So they're not sitting there wasting time. So I tell my students to expect 1 to 2 sheets per hour they work for you. So at least it gets
Yeah.
predictable again.
Yeah. No, it sounds great. I mean, it sounds really good. I just I want to dive in and learn more. I mean, it sounds great. It sounds like a good way to go, safe way to go. Sounds like it's some work. I mean,
No question.
you don't get something for nothing.
No,
Um,
to that point, let me comment on that, Dave. This is another, I talked about the gap earlier, but this is another one of my pet peeves because there's just too many people that do the late night commercials and get rich tomorrow. And the biggest thing we look at on an applicant and we talk to them about is what their expectation is. So if they see, like, I need a deal in 60 days to pay my mortgage, it's not a fit for you. Like, you got to fix that first. I want someone to say, I like your niche and I'll commit for 36 months with blinders on and follow everything you say. Because then I know they're going to have a huge success. Even if it takes a bunch of bopping and weaving for a year, which some of them have taken that and some have taken 30 days. But usually what's the difference is in the mind, right? It's all mindset. So I want them to say, I get this and I'm committed for 36 months and then we'll have a great experience. That's any business, I think. That's if you're selling popcorn on the street corner or you're operating a restaurant, find someone that does that and don't deviate for 36 months. Don't get the, what do you call it, the shiny object syndrome, just go for 36.
yeah. Now I'm kind of curious. I think, and I may have read it wrong, but I think you alluded to that some properties you actually hold on long term. So it's not like a 2 to 4 year flip. It's long term. How do you kind of make those decisions and choose which you might keep and which you just, go through the process?
Yeah. Okay. Couple things. There's a moral and ethical thing first that I alluded to earlier, and that is on the lease purchases. If I'm talking to you and this is your main residence, you have the capital gains thing if you weren't there 2 out of 5 years in the look back. So if I go more than 36 months, I'm going to trigger capital gains on a residence that you probably didn't think you were going to get taxed on. And most sellers don't know that. And so that's why I said moral and ethical, really. They don't even ask us for that. And I say to them, hey, did you think of this? And they always thank us because they would have got whacked. If it's owner financing or subject to existing financing, we try to push the term as long as they can go out. And we've been setting the students up to not get stuck on this 36-month thing if you're doing the buy, because you have way more control. You get to depreciate it. You have all kinds of control when you can go further out like that and buy it versus the lease purchase. But again, if they're brand new, I'll start them out on lease purchase because there's $10 deposit. There's no money down,
Yeah. Yeah. And then what about, do you actually retain any properties long term? I mean, where you actually take ownership in your name?
Yeah, so some of the sub 2 properties that we bought, I'll give you an example. It's always best with an example. So we did a sandwich lease on a 2-unit building once. The school teacher was retiring. I did a little deal with him and he says, hey, I got another house for you. So we bought it subject to, in other words, the loans in his name to this day. We still have this house. This was back in 13, I think. It's a 2-unit. We put a tenant buyer in there for us when we were under the lease purchase because it started as a lease purchase. About 2 years in, they had a life event, this couple. They broke up, they left the house. We're saying, oh man, we got a year left in the term. To our earlier point, we left a buffer. So I called Keith, he's the seller, and I said, Keith, I got an idea. At the end of the lease purchase in 1 year, you were going to get 10 grand. That was his equity. And he was thrilled with that. I said, if I buy this now, I'll pay a transfer tax. The loan stays in your name. I'll give you $7,500 now instead of waiting for a year. But I'm going to own the house. There's no end date on when I'm going to pay your loan off. He agreed to it. So we own this house still. We put a tenant buyer in there at year 3 who just had a spouse pass away. Like this house, 2 buyers had life events, which can happen. It happens a few times a year. So we turned around and said, look, we own this thing, to your question of long term. And so why don't we just keep it long term and either rent, which I don't love to do. I don't like being a landlord on a lot of the properties, or we'll owner finance it for someone that has a big enough down payment. So a Brazilian woman came forth last month and said, I'll give you $100,000. This house is only 2.25. I'll give you $100,000 down if you'll finance it for me because I can't get a loan. So long story short, that's closing December 23rd. She gave us $100,000 down. We did a wrap because there's an existing mortgage already on the house, and she's tickled pink. She's got her family already moved in. We gave her possession, and I'm not worried about her paying us. So we're kind of like the bank there. We did a wrap on the sub too. I'm not worried about her at all with $100,000 down in the deal.
Yeah.
So that's a long term.
I love it. I think there's a lot more for people to learn. And once again, Chris, so you are at smartrealestatecoach.com. Is there anything else people want to be aware of to learn more about you, learn more about what you do, that type of thing?
I'm big on free. So the site that you mentioned, our YouTube channel has just a plethora of information on it. They can subscribe. And then I had told you before the show, I'd love to give them all that hard copy book that you showed. And I got this thing about when someone says, get my book for free, and then you go on and then you got to put a credit card in for $10 for shipping. So no cost for shipping, no credit card. Just go to free, SRECbook.com, free SRECbook.com. You just have to say you heard us talk on this show. That's it. And
Yeah.
we'll send it off to you.
On the Manage to Win podcast is less than 150 pages. Come on, you can do this during Christmas vacation. Get the book now, or get one and get it and give it to a gift. You might want to give it to your spouse or your special other, right?
Absolutely.
So, Chris, thank you very much for being with us. Really appreciate it. Thanks our audience. Here's a great, hey, this is a New Year tip. I mean, something you guys can do new. I also like Chris, and I want to remind the audience that you said they apply to work with your coaches, that you're going to be selective on who they work through. And it really doesn't sound like it's based on net worth. It's based on commitment and willingness to follow through.
Yeah, no, good points. Thanks for clarifying. No net worth whatsoever. I want to know that I got someone that wants to go after it. And some of the coaching levels are with me personally, some are with my son Zach, and some are with our coaches.
Sounds fantastic. Well, thanks again for being with us, and thanks everybody for joining in. I hope you follow up and take Chris up on his offer, and some of you get involved in the program.